When the world goes quiet, some voices still remain. Not every soul finds peace when the clock strikes 12. There are stories hidden in the shadows, whispers drifting between the living and the forgotten. Some stories linger, some souls don't leave. Welcome to Stillness After Midnight, where every silence tells a story. If you're drawn to the mysteries that stir after dark, the voices that echo when the world sleeps, subscribe now and join us as we listen to the souls who still have something to say, because in the stillness, the truth finally speaks. I still remember the first time I heard about the legend. It was not in a book, nor in any dusty archive where I usually buried myself, but in a trembling whisper from an old woman at a mountain market. She wore a faded scarf, her face creased like rice paper left too long under the sun. Her words carried the weight of something older than memory, and though she spoke in Vietnamese, haltingly, I caught the tone, the kind of tone people use when they speak of things they should not. I had been traveling through Vietnam for 3 months, wandering from town to town, following my obsession with Eastern folklore. My name is Jonathan Blake, a cultural historian from London. But if I am honest, historian is just the profession I use to justify my hunger. What truly drew me across oceans was not the polite study of culture, but the secret spine of fear that runs through every tradition. The rituals, the warnings, the superstitions whispered at night. That day, in the misty folds of the northern mountains, I had stopped at a small wooden stall to drink tea. The air smelled of wet leaves and incense, as if the earth itself had been praying. The old woman sat beside me uninvited, her hands clutching a woven basket, and without introduction, she leaned close and said in a voice that cracked like an old floorboard, "Don't walk past the three-way crossroad after dark. The Quy Bong will take you." The phrase was unfamiliar to me. My Vietnamese was still clumsy, but I understood enough. Quy meant demon, Bong, to eat shadows. At first I thought she was simply retelling one of those village warnings meant to keep children inside at night. But her eyes did not flicker with the sly amusement of someone sharing folklore. Instead, they held the fixed terror of memory. "People vanish," she whispered. "Only their shoes remain. The shadow goes first. Then," she let her voice trail off. I had smiled politely, thinking it just another myth to add to my collection. Yet something in her gaze, the way she refused to touch the ground with her feet as she left, unsettled me. And so, when she mentioned the name of the village, Ban Gan Ba, I knew I would have to go. The journey to Ban Gan Ba took 2 days by foot. The road wound like a serpent through steep hills, past terraced rice fields shimmering under the sun, then into darker forests where bamboo groves whispered secrets to the wind. I walked mostly in silence, accompanied only by the hollow rhythm of my boots and the occasional bark of distant dogs. When I arrived, the village looked unremarkable at first. Clusters of wooden stilt houses, smoke curling from their roofs, children running barefoot, chickens scattered as I entered, and a few villagers looked at me with the same mixture of curiosity and suspicion I had grown used to. Yet I noticed something peculiar. None of the villagers cast long shadows. It was late afternoon. The sun stretched low, painting the ground with golden light. My own figure sprawled across the dirt path behind me, long and skeletal. But the villagers? Their bodies seemed to resist the sun, their shadows shorter than they should have been, almost faded. For a moment I thought it was a trick of the light, but as I turned, the sensation deepened. Their shadows looked thin, like old ink dissolving in water. An old man greeted me, his back bent like a question mark. He introduced himself as Lam, the village head. His voice was low, each word pulled from somewhere deep inside. "You are far from home, foreign scholar. What brings you here?" I told him of my interest in local traditions, how I wished to record stories of the mountain people. He gave a thin smile, but I saw something shift in his eyes. A hesitation, a tightening. "You will find stories here," he said, "but not all stories wish to be remembered. That night I stayed in one of the stilt houses the villagers had prepared for guests. A kerosene lamp flickered on the low wooden table, casting soft pools of light. The air smelled faintly of smoke and dried herbs. I opened my notebook, eager to write down impressions, but the silence pressed in so heavily that even the scratch of my pen felt intrusive. At some point, I heard the slow clop of wooden clogs outside. The sound was unmistakable, deliberate, echoing in the night air. Curious, I blew out my lamp and peered through the bamboo slats of the wall. The street below was empty. Only the wind moved, brushing gently against the banana leaves. Yet the sound continued. Clop, clop, not near, not far, somewhere between. I leaned closer. That was when I saw it. A figure stood at the three-way crossroad at the edge of the village. The lantern light from the communal house faintly outlined it. But there was something wrong. The figure cast no shadow. The ground beneath it was bare, untouched by the glow. And as I stared, the figure bent slowly, unnaturally, as if its spine were made of smoke. My throat tightened. I blinked, and in that blink, the figure was gone. Only the crossroad remained, empty and silent. I told myself it was exhaustion, that my mind, overstimulated by tales and travel, had invented the scene. Yet even as I lay back, the sound of clogs lingered, echoing faintly against the walls of my skull. The next morning I decided to ask. Over breakfast, a simple meal of rice and boiled greens, I sat with Lam. His face was unreadable, but his silence seemed heavier than the food. Last night, I said carefully, I heard someone walking outside, at the crossroad. The old man's spoon stopped midair. Do not speak of it, he said firmly. His voice carried no anger, only fear. Is it the Quian Bong? I asked. The words felt unnatural on my tongue, as though I had invoked something best left unnamed. His eyes darkened. For a long while he said nothing. Then in a whisper, if you speak its name too loudly, it will hear, and if it hears, it will follow. Later that day, I wandered the village, hoping to gain trust through gentler conversation. Children avoided me, darting behind fences. Women at the well stopped their chatter when I approached. But one young man, perhaps no older than 20, finally spoke. His name was Ben. You saw it, didn't you? He asked suddenly as we walked near the rice fields. I hesitated. What do you mean? The one without a shadow. His voice trembled. My brother disappeared there last year. We found his sandals at the crossroad. Nothing else. I felt a chill climb my spine. Does no one try to stop it? I asked. Ben shook his head. How do you stop something that does not bleed? Our grandfathers say it feeds on the part of us that touches the world. Once your shadow is gone, you are no longer real. His words rang in me like a funeral bell. Once your shadow is gone, you are no longer real. That night, as I lay in the dim light of the lamp, I could not stop staring at the floor, at my own shadow stretched across the boards. Solid, dark, familiar. And yet I felt its fragility, as though at any moment some unseen mouth could drink it away. I turned off the lamp, but sleep would not come. The silence pressed down like a stone. Outside, a dog howled once, then stopped abruptly, as if its voice had been stolen. And in the distance, faint but steady, came again the clop of unseen clogs at the crossroad. I woke to the sound of rain tapping against the wooden walls. Dawn in the village came quietly, the mountains still wrapped in mist like a shroud. My body ached from a restless night, but it was not the rain that had kept me awake. It was the echo of those wooden clogs, pacing back and forth at the crossroad in my mind. The villagers were already awake, moving like shadows themselves. I watched them through the gaps in the bamboo wall, women carrying baskets of wet rice straw, men heading out with sickles. None of them met my eyes. None of them spoke more than a whisper. It was as if the entire village lived under an invisible weight. I stepped outside into the damp morning air, hoping the rain would clear my head. The earth smelled of mud and smoke, and in the distance I saw the crossroad where I had glimpsed the figure last night. A place so ordinary, a fork of dirt paths flanked by two shriveled trees, yet my stomach tightened as if I were staring at a grave. Ben found me there. His face looked pale, his eyes ringed with sleeplessness. "You shouldn't stand here in the morning either," he said quickly, pulling at my sleeve. "This place, it holds the memory of what walks here at night." "Tell me more," I urged. "I need to understand." He hesitated, his lips parting, closing, like he feared the air itself might punish him for speaking. Finally he whispered, "They say the Kui Unbong was born from a curse. Long ago, a man betrayed his family. He stole rice meant for the spirits and left the altar empty. His greed broke the balance, and when he died, his soul could not cross. They say it turned hungry, hungry for shadows, the last tether of the living to this earth. Since then, it waits here, where three paths meet. At night it calls. If you hear the clogs, you must never look. If you do," he looked at me with haunted eyes, "it will notice your shadow." His words should have sounded like folklore, just another myth embroidered by fear. But something in his trembling voice rooted into me. I could not shake the image of the sandals left in the dirt, a life swallowed whole without a scream. That afternoon, the rain cleared, leaving the village washed in silver light. I decided to walk the perimeter of the village to note details for my research. The forest pressed close, dense and dark, as if conspiring with the village to hide something. It was then that I stumbled upon a small shrine at the edge of the rice fields. It was nothing more than a wooden platform, but dozens of pairs of old shoes lay neatly beneath it. Sandals, boots, straw slippers, all weathered, abandoned. Some looked ancient, rotting with age. Others were newer, mud still clinging to the soles. I bent down, my breath catching. Each pair seemed carefully placed, as though someone had collected them and laid them to rest. An old woman appeared beside me suddenly, so silent I startled. She shook her head fiercely and hissed, "Don't touch." "Why are these here?" I asked softly. Her voice cracked with bitterness. "Those are all that remain. Each pair once belonged to someone taken. We keep them here so their families remember. Without them, memory would vanish too." I stared at the shoes, an entire history of absence arranged in rows, like offerings to something that never stopped hungering. That night, sleep became impossible. I left the lamp burning, its glow casting trembling shadows across the walls. I found myself watching those shadows more than anything else, measuring their depth, their solidity, as though fearing they might thin while I wasn't looking. Then past midnight, the sound returned. Clop, clop, clop. It came from the crossroad, steady, unhurried, the way a predator circles prey it knows cannot escape. My heart pounded, but some reckless force pushed me to the window. I saw nothing at first, only the pale outline of the dirt path under the moon. But then a pair of sandals appeared, not worn on feet, but moving, step by step, as though guided by invisible legs. The wooden clogs struck the earth, yet no body stood above them. I froze. My mouth went dry. The sandals moved to the center of the crossroad and stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the sound. Even the crickets had gone mute, as though nature itself refused to witness. And then, my lamp flickered. I looked down. My shadow on the floor trembled, like smoke in the wind. It stretched unnaturally, thin at the edges, as though something was tugging it outward. Panic seized me. I slammed the lamp shut with my palm, plunging the room into darkness. For a moment I thought my heart would burst. When I dared look again, the sandals were gone. I did not sleep. The next day I demanded answers from Liam, the village head. His face tightened like stone. "You should leave," he said simply. "Outsiders are not meant to carry this curse." "I cannot leave," I insisted. "Not when something like this exists. People must know. The world must understand." His eyes burned with sudden anger. "Understand? What would you understand, scholar? That shadows are fragile? That greed breeds monsters? That we live every day beside an abyss no one dares name? Write it in your book if you wish, but do not think words will protect you. His voice lowered to a growl. Once it notices you, it does not forget. I walked away shaken. His words clung to me like cold rain. That evening, Ben came to me secretly. His face was pale with fear. You must not stay tonight, he whispered. I saw how you looked yesterday. It noticed your shadow. Once it tastes you, it will come again and again until nothing remains. His hands shook as he pressed something into mine, a bundle of incense sticks tied with red thread. Light these before the shrine of shoes, he said. It will not banish it, but maybe it will delay. I clutched the incense, the rough thread biting my palm. I wanted to believe it was enough, but in my heart, I already knew. I had lingered too long at the crossroad. That night, as darkness swallowed the mountains, I lit the incense by the shrine. Smoke curled upward, carrying a scent both sweet and bitter. The shoes lay in silence, each pair a mute witness. Then from beyond the trees came the sound again. Clop, clop, clop. Slow, patient, inevitable. I turned, and in the moonlight, I saw it more clearly than ever before. A figure without substance, its outline wavering like a shadow torn loose from a body. No face, no eyes, only a hollow absence, darker than night. And at its feet, the clogs struck the ground, their sounds sinking deep into my bones. I wanted to run, but my legs would not move. And then I saw it, my shadow stretching toward the figure, reaching as though eager to be swallowed. The incense in my hand burned low, the last thread of smoke curling upward, and I realized, once the flame died, I might not remain. The incense smoldered until only glowing ash remained. I watched it die, helpless, as if a thread tying me to the world had been cut. The figure at the crossroad did not move closer, yet I felt it tightening around me like a noose. My body remained rigid, but my shadow, my own shadow, stretched, thinned, trembled in a way flesh never could. Then, without warning, the figure dissolved into the dark, as though it had never been there. The night regained its silence. The crickets returned. My shadow fell still, but I could not breathe. My lungs burned as I collapsed onto the ground, clutching the soil with both hands. The shoes by the shrine seemed to stare, mute reminders of those who had stood where I now knelt. By dawn, my face felt hollow, my skin clammy. I barely recognized the man in the small mirror inside the stilt house. My eyes had sunk deeper, ringed in gray, my skin pale as candle wax. Worse than that, my reflection seemed duller, as if my image itself was fading. I pressed my hand to the floor. My shadow obeyed. Yet even in daylight it appeared slightly blurred, the edges no longer sharp. That realization chilled me deeper than the mountain air. Something had marked me. I tried to confront Liam again. He did not look surprised when I spoke of my fading shadow. He only shook his head slowly. You stayed too long, he muttered. It brushed you. Once that happens, you are neither fully alive nor yet gone. It will return for the rest. There must be something you can do, I insisted. My voice cracked, desperate. Do you think we haven't tried? His eyes hardened. We built shrines, burned incense, spilled blood, prayed to every spirit in the mountains. Nothing stops hunger born of betrayal. All we can do is wait and remember the taken. The bitterness in his tone silenced me. Still, I couldn't accept it. To live as a shadow growing thinner each night, that was not life. That was waiting for disappearance. I turned to Ben. He alone showed me compassion. That night he came to my lodging again, his face pale but determined. There is one thing, he whispered, a story my grandmother told me, if you dare. What is it? Those taken are not completely gone. Their shadows linger, trapped in the old well at the center of the village. If you go there at night when the Kwai roams, you may see them. Some say you can call your shadow back before it disappears completely. But his throat tightened. No one who tried has ever returned. The words struck me like cold iron, a chance, however slim, or surrender to a slow erasure. I stared at my hand against the wall. My shadow there looked thinner than it had the night before. "I'll go," I whispered. The old well stood in the middle of the village square. By day it was unremarkable, an ancient ring of moss-covered stone, water dark and still within. But that night, when I approached with only a lantern, the well seemed bottomless, a black mouth gaping wide. The villagers' homes were shuttered, their lamps extinguished. Only silence filled the square, broken by my own heartbeat. I set the lantern on the rim and leaned over. At first I saw nothing but water, but slowly shapes emerged below. Shadows. They swam across the surface like ink in water, twisting, writhing, faces half-formed then dissolving again. Some stretched out hands, begging. Others simply floated, their outlines frayed, their silence unbearable. My stomach turned. I felt as though I was staring into a mirror of death itself. Not bodies, but the echoes of lives stripped away. And then I saw one shadow that moved differently. It clung to the reflection of my own lantern, reaching upward, its shape familiar. It mimicked my gestures, my own missing pieces. I reached down instinctively. My fingers brushed the water. It was ice cold, pulling at me with a strength far greater than liquid should hold. The shadow latched on, tugging, desperate, and then the sound began again. Clop, 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 from behind me. I froze, bent over the well. The sound drew closer, echoing across the square. My shadow in the water writhed violently, as though afraid. The lantern flickered. I dared not look back. The old woman's warning rang in my head. If you look, it notices you. But wasn't I already noticed? My shadow thinning, fraying. The clogs stopped just behind me. I felt the air chill, as though someone exhaled cold mist upon my neck. I forced myself to whisper into the well. "Come back, please." The shadow in the water jerked, struggling upward. For a moment I thought it would tear free, but then another shape rose from the depths, taller, darker, with no form except hunger. It seized the shadow and dragged it down. The water rippled once, then went still. Behind me the clogs resumed their slow, steady rhythm. I could not move. My knees buckled, but somehow I tore myself away, grabbed the lantern, and stumbled from the square. I did not dare glance back, though the sound followed me until I collapsed inside the stilt house, shaking. The next morning the villagers avoided me entirely. Their eyes darted away, their mouths set in the grim lines. Even Bin did not appear. When I looked at the floor, my shadow was thinner still, barely a smear. I realized then what truly terrified them. Not the demon alone, but me. Someone already touched, half consumed. I was becoming an omen they did not want to see. The shrine of shoes lingered at the edge of the fields, each pair a silent accusation. I wondered how many had stood at that well, as I had begging. How many had heard the clogs behind them, felt the breath on their necks, and how many had faded, leaving only their sandals behind. That night I resolved to make one last attempt. If my shadow was to vanish, I wanted to understand what awaited beyond. I prepared a lantern, incense, and my notebook. My hands shook as I wrote a final line before leaving. If these pages remain, let them bear witness. The Qian Bong is real, and it is hungry. I spent the day wandering like a ghost among the villagers. Their eyes avoided me as though they feared contamination. Children who once peeked curiously from doorways now fled inside at the sight of me. Even Bin kept his distance, though I caught his gaze once, filled with sorrow and something worse, resignation. By afternoon the mountains shone under a dull gray sky, yet the shadows of the people seemed even thinner than before, as if the entire village was slowly being consumed. I tried to measure my own against the wall. It was almost translucent, an outline trembling like smoke. I wondered, When it vanished completely, would I drop to the earth like an empty husk? Or would I simply dissolve, as if I had never stood here at all? I should have left. I knew that. I knew. But some force held me. Curiosity, obsession, or perhaps the same hunger that drove the demon itself. I wanted to see it, to face it, to understand. That evening I prepared carefully. I lit the incense Ben had given me, though only a few sticks remained. I packed my notebook, pen, and lantern. Each act felt like arranging my own funeral. As night fell, silence blanketed the village. Doors slammed shut, shutters fastened. No dogs barked, no voices lingered. Only my own footsteps sounded as I walked toward the crossroad. The air there was colder, as though the earth exhaled from some deep cavern below. The two withered trees stretched their branches like skeletal hands. I set my lantern down and stood at the center, waiting. For a long time, nothing moved. I almost convinced myself that it would not come, that perhaps I had been spared. Then faintly came the sound. Clop, clop, clop. The rhythm of inevitability. It grew louder, though no form appeared. The air thickened, pressing against my chest. My lantern flickered, shadows jerking violently on the ground. My own shadow stretched thin across the dirt, trembling, and then I saw it. It did not emerge from the forest or rise from the soil. It simply coalesced, as though night itself had chosen to take shape. A figure darker than darkness, faceless, hollow. Its edges bled into the air, always shifting, never whole. At its feet, the clogs struck the ground, wooden, deliberate. The stories had not lied. The Qian Bong. I wanted to run, but my body refused. Every nerve screamed, yet my legs felt rooted. I could only watch as it tilted its head, a gesture without bones, and turned toward me. That was when I noticed it had no shadow of its own. Instead, it gazed, if gazing can be done without eyes, at mine. My thin, trembling outline shivered across the dirt. The demon bent slowly, impossibly, its faceless head lowering until it hovered just above my shadow. I felt a tug, deep and violent, not on my body but on something beneath it, as though the ground itself had hooked into my existence and begun to reel it out of me. The incense hissed faintly beside me. Smoke curled upward. The demon recoiled slightly, its form wavering like mist. I seized the chance, stumbling back, clutching the burning sticks like a weapon. It did not vanish, but it did not advance. It stood at the center of the crossroad, watching, waiting, the clogs tapping once more in a slow rhythm. Clop, a pause, clop, as though mocking the beat of my own heart. I backed away until the houses came into sight. Only then did the sound fade. Inside the safety of the stilled house, I collapsed onto the floor. My chest heaved, my skin clammy. My shadow, cast by the flickering lamp, looked even paler now, thinner than paper. I scribbled into my notebook, my handwriting jagged. It exists. It has no face, no voice, only hunger. It seeks only one thing, the thread that ties us to this earth, our shadows. Without them, we are nothing. The words blurred as my vision swam. I pressed the pen harder, desperate to leave proof, even if I would not survive. At dawn, I awoke to knocking at my door. It was Ben. His face was drawn, eyes red from lack of sleep. "You went there?" he said flatly. Not a question, but an accusation. "Yes," my voice cracked. "I saw it." He shook his head. "Then it will not stop. It knows you now. There must be a way, some ritual, some offering." Ben's eyes glistened. "The only offering it takes is us. That is the truth we live with." I wanted to argue, but the words dried on my tongue. His despair was heavier than any denial I could muster. Later that day, the old woman from the market appeared at my door. I recognized her scarf, her creased face. She looked at me as though she had been expecting this. "You carry the mark," she said softly. "Your shadow no longer belongs to you." I swallowed hard. "Then what happens to me?" Her eyes flickered to the floor. When it takes the last of you, you will be forgotten. Not dead, worse, never born. The world will close around your absence as if you never walked here. The thought hollowed me out. To die was one thing, but to be erased, to be unwritten, that was terror beyond any grave. I asked her, desperate, why does it choose some and not others? Her lips pressed tight. After a long silence, she whispered, because it feeds on those who look too long. Curiosity is also a kind of invitation. That night I did not go to the crossroad. I sat in my room with every lamp lit, their weak flames trembling. Yet even surrounded by light, I felt no safer. Shadows danced across the walls, mocking me with their thinness. And then, somewhere in the night, came the sound again. Clop, clop. Not at the crossroad this time. Closer, within the village itself. I blew out the lamps at once, heart hammering. In the sudden darkness, I pressed myself against the floor, listening. The clogs passed just outside my door, slowly, patiently. My shadow, faint even in the moonlight, shivered across the wooden boards. I covered my eyes with trembling hands, but the sound lingered, circling the house. Clop, clop. I knew then. It would not wait at the crossroad anymore. It had followed me. I tried to tell myself that night had been a dream, that the clogs circling my house were only the creaks of wood in the wind. But when dawn broke, I knew otherwise. I stood outside in the pale light, my body casting almost nothing onto the earth. My shadow, once a faithful twin, now barely clung to my feet. A smear, a suggestion, like ink spilled then rubbed away. I lifted my hand. The shadow hesitated before following, sluggish, as though it no longer belonged to me. The air in the village was heavier than ever. Smoke from morning fires rose weakly, dispersing too quickly, as if even the air feared to linger. The villagers saw me and turned away. To them, I was already gone. Ben came to me only after sunset, slipping inside my room like a thief. His face was pale, lips cracked. "It walked past your door last night, didn't it?" he asked. I nodded. His eyes burned with a fear so raw I almost pitied him. "It will not stop. Once it circles a house, it means you are chosen. You should have left when I warned you." "I can't leave her," I said, though even I didn't know why anymore. Was it pride, curiosity, or some strange compulsion the demon itself had planted in me? Ben grabbed my wrist. His grip was cold, desperate. "Then at least don't go out after dark. And never ever look at your shadow when it moves on its own." The way he said it, matter of fact, like a law of nature, froze me. That night I tried to follow his advice. I lit no lamps, lay still on the mat, and closed my eyes. But sleep was impossible. Every creak of the house made me flinch. Every whisper of wind against the thatch became the scrape of wooden clogs. And then, through my eyelids, I felt it, the flicker of movement, faint against the floorboards. My heart stuttered. I opened my eyes just a slit. Moonlight spilled through the gaps in the bamboo wall. My shadow lay stretched beside me, but it was not still. It was breathing. Its chest rose and fell with a rhythm separate from mine, slow and deliberate. My own lungs felt bound, as if my breath no longer belonged to me. I squeezed my eyes shut, biting my tongue to keep from crying out. Ben's warning echoed, "Never look when it moves on its own." The boards creaked softly, as though another weight had stepped into the room. The air chilled, and then came the sound, faint but unmistakable. Clop, clop, inside. I held my breath until my chest ached. The sound circled me once, twice. My shadow shifted with each step, jerking unnaturally, as though tugged by invisible strings. Then silence. When I dared open my eyes, my shadow lay still again, thin as paper. The next morning I staggered outside, my body hollow. My reflection in the water jar was terrifying, my face pale, my eyes clouded. But worse was the absence behind me. In the sunlight, my shadow was gone. I screamed. The sound tore from me raw and broken. Villagers froze where they stood, horror etched on their faces. Then they scattered, fleeing from me as if I carried plague. I stumbled through the dirt streets, clawing at the ground where my shadow should be. But there was only bare earth. I felt lighter, yes, but not in any way that belonged to life. Lighter, as if parts of me had already been cut away. Only Ben dared come near. He held me up as I collapsed against a wall. "It has taken most of you," he whispered, tears in his eyes. "Soon there will be nothing left." "What happens then?" I croaked. He shook his head. "You will vanish. Not die, just slip out of the world, as if you were never here." I clutched his shirt, desperate. "There must be a way back." "There is no way back," he said. "Only a choice. Wait for it to finish, or walk to it willingly." That night I decided I would not wait. I lit my lantern, though the flame trembled faintly, barely casting light. Without a shadow, the room felt wrong, flat as if I was untethered. Each object cast its mark, but I remained in absence. I walked into the night, past shuttered homes, toward the crossroad. The air there pulsed with silence, thick and damp like breath held too long. The clogs came quickly this time, approaching from the dark. Clop, clop, clop. And then it stood before me again, the figure darker than night, formless yet suffocating, its faceless head tilted, and though it had no eyes, I felt it notice my emptiness. "You've already taken it," I whispered. My voice was thin, broken. "Why do you linger?" The demon did not answer. It never answered. Instead, it leaned closer. Where its face should be, I felt a pull, like a tide. My chest constricted. Then, to my horror, something new happened. The shadows of the trees beside the road began to peel upward, twisting toward the figure, bending unnaturally. The demon wasn't only feeding on mine, it was feeding on everything nearby, swallowing the night itself. I stumbled back, clutching the lantern. Its flame flared, casting light that pushed the figure slightly away. But the flames sputtered, starved of oil. In that wavering moment, I understood the truth. It wasn't simply erasing shadows. It was consuming the very proof of existence. The shoes left behind weren't memorials. They were all that resisted its hunger. Leather and wood held memory better than flesh. When the lantern finally died, I braced for the pull, but it didn't come. Instead, I heard a whisper, not a voice exactly, more like the echo of my own thoughts, hollowed out and thrown back at me. "You were never here." I collapsed in the dirt, clutching the shoes I had grabbed instinctively from the shrine earlier that day. A child's sandals, worn and cracked. I pressed them to my chest like a talisman. The figure wavered, retreating slightly, as though the shoes repelled it. For the first time, I saw hesitation in its movements. I staggered back toward the village, the sandals still in my arms. The sound of clogs followed me only halfway, then faded into silence. When I reached the stilt house, I fell to my knees, trembling. I had no shadow. I was marked, almost erased, but the sandals, these remnants of another life, had kept me from vanishing completely. For now. The child's sandals lay on the floor beside my sleeping mat, worn straps frayed, their leather stiff with age. I had not let them leave my sight since that night. Somehow they had shielded me, repelled the figure long enough for me to crawl back alive. But the protection came with a weight. Each time I looked at them, I imagined the child who once wore them, the small feet that had run across these same dirt paths, now erased. No face came to me, only absence, an emptiness heavier than any image. I clutched the sandals in my hands and whispered a name I invented, just to soothe my mind. "Lynn," I said. "Whoever you were, you're Lynn now." The name lingered in the room, soft as incense smoke. For a moment I felt less alone. The villagers noticed the sandals too. When I carried them to the shrine the next morning, whispers rose like a rustling wind. Some bowed their heads, others spat on the ground. Lum, the village head, approached me with eyes that burned with restrained fury. You should not have taken them, he hissed. They saved me, I argued. The Kwai hesitated when I held them. Because they do not belong to you. His voice cracked, raw with anger. They are memorials. Without them, we remember nothing. You dishonor the lost by using their remnants as charms. Would you rather I be erased? I asked, desperate. He stared at me long, his expression unreadable. Then he turned away, muttering, perhaps that would be better. The cruelty of the words stung, yet beneath them was not hatred, but fear. To him, I was already a shadow myself, half vanished, half cursed. Bean found me later, when the square had emptied. His face was pale but kind. Don't return them yet, he whispered. If they help, keep them. No one will admit it, but we all wish we had done the same when our loved ones vanished. None of us dared. You dared. That is why it hates you. His words chilled me. Dared? No. It had been nothing more than instinct, desperation in the face of annihilation. Yet perhaps instinct itself is what the demon feeds upon. That night I placed the sandals beside my bed like holy relics. The room seemed quieter, steadier. For the first time in days I drifted into a shallow sleep. But dreams came. In them, I stood at the crossroad, sandals in hand. Shadows gathered around me, not one, not two, but dozens. They pressed close, whispering in voices like dry leaves. Give them back. Give them back. The sandals burned hot in my hands. I dropped them, but they clung to me, straps tightening like vines around my wrists. The shadows lunged, faceless, grasping, endless. I woke with a scream, sweat soaking my body. The sandals sat quietly by the bed, innocent, unchanged. Yet my wrists bore faint red marks where the straps had tightened in the dream. The following day, I wandered again to the shrine at the village edge. The rows of shoes seemed endless. Each pair was different. Mud-caked boots, delicate slippers, straw sandals. Each pair a silence, a story cut short. I knelt before them, the child's sandals clutched in my lap. For a moment, I felt all their weight pressing on me, an invisible mass of absence. And then, I heard it. Whispers. Not in the air, but in my head, like a faint chorus. I strained to understand. Words flickered in and out. Fragments of memory. A mother's call. The sound of laughter. The crack of clogs on dirt. The shoes were not only memorials. They were anchors, vessels holding fragments of the erased. Their voices lingered in the leather, the wood, the cloth. I staggered back, heart pounding. Was that why the Kwai hesitated? Because in clutching the sandals, I had not stood alone. I had stood with a fragment of someone it had already taken. The thought terrified and exhilarated me in equal measure. That night I tested the theory. I placed the sandals in the center of the room, lit incense beside them, and waited. The clogs came, as they always did. Clop, clop, clop. The sound circled the stilt house, deliberate. The air chilled, pressing against my skin. My thin outline flickered faintly across the floorboards. Then, the sandals shifted, not far, only an inch. But I saw it. The straps quivered, as if tugged by invisible hands. And then a child's voice, faint as a breath. Don't let go. I froze, trembling. The figure appeared at the doorway, darker than the night itself, clogs striking wood. It leaned inward, faceless, hungry, but the sandals glowed faintly in the incense light. My shadow, though weak, clung closer to me. The figure hesitated. For the first time, it did not enter. It stood there for what felt like eternity. Then with a slow, deliberate step, it turned back into the night. By dawn, I understood the truth. The shoes are not just remnants, they are resistance, proof that the erased had once been real, proof the demon cannot consume entirely, and now I carry that proof. But proof is also weight. Each whisper, Each flicker of movement in the sandals grew stronger. I was not only keeping the child's absence at bay, I was inviting it closer. When I walked through the village, I felt the weight of a small hand clutching mine, though no hand was there. When I sat to eat, I heard faint laughter, a child's giggle, though no one stood nearby. The sandals saved me, but at what cost? That evening, Ben approached me again. His eyes fell on the sandals in my hand, and he shivered. "You've bound yourself to it," he said. "To them. The longer you keep those shoes, the less you will belong to yourself." I wanted to argue, but the truth was already in me. My wrists still bore the faint marks from the dream. My ears still rang with laughter that did not exist. Yet I could not let them go, because without them, the demon would return. That night I dreamt again, this time not of shadows but of the child. Lynn, small, faceless, but real in a way that tore at me. She walked beside me, bare feet slapping the earth. We approached the crossroad together, and there, waiting, was the demon. It did not chase me this time. It only pointed at the sandals in my hands. I woke gasping, the image burning into my skull. The message was clear. The sandals were not mine. The demon would wait, patiently, until I returned them. But if I did, what would become of me? Morning light spilled across the village like weak broth, watery and thin. I sat by the window, sandals in my lap, fingers tracing their worn straps. They had saved me, yes, but now they whispered constantly, faint, insistent, like a child tugging at a sleeve. Sometimes I heard laughter. Sometimes I felt the press of tiny fingers curling around mine. Always it came from just beyond the edge of sight. "Lynn," I murmured, the name I had given her. "What do you want from me?" The silence answered with a chill, and the sandals twitched softly, as if shifting in restless sleep. When I stepped outside, the villagers scattered further than before. I was not only cursed now, I was unnatural. They saw me cradling the sandals, heard me whispering to something that wasn't there. Mothers clutched their children tight, pulling them inside. Only Ben approached, though reluctantly. He eyed the sandals with dread. "You shouldn't speak to it," he said. "It saved me," I countered. "It's not saving you," he whispered, voice trembling. "It's using you. The Kwai feeds on shadows, yes, but shadows cling to memories. If you carry that child's remnant, you carry her hunger too. She is not what you think." I tightened my grip. "Then tell me, what is she?" Ben's eyes darkened. "Nothing. She is absence pretending to be presence. A fragment. If you listen too long, you'll forget which voice is yours." That night I tested his warning. I set the sandals across the room, far from reach, lit no incense, held no offerings. At first the silence was whole, then footsteps, bare, soft, pattering across the wooden floor. Not the heavy clop of clogs, but the light tread of a child. I sat rigid. The sandals slid across the floorboards, slowly, as if carried by invisible feet. They stopped inches from my mat. And then came the voice, soft, high, impossibly close. "Don't leave me again." My chest constricted. Tears sprang unbidden. The plea pierced deeper than fear. It clawed at pity, at grief. Whoever she was, whatever she was not simply gone. I reached out, fingers trembling. The air between us felt cold, denser than smoke. For a heartbeat I thought I touched skin. Then, the clogs. Clop, clop. Outside, circling the house, the child's voice whimpered, "Hide me." I seized the sandals, clutching them to my chest. At once the clogs stopped. Silence fell, thick and suffocating. When I dared to look again, the night lay still. But I knew what had happened. The Kwai had circled, sensed, and paused, because I was no longer alone. The following days blurred. I walked with the sandals everywhere, felt the child's presence close behind. Sometimes when I stepped, I heard the echo of a smaller step beside mine. Sometimes when I stopped at the well to drink, a second reflection wavered faintly in the water. Not a full body, only a suggestion, but enough. The villagers whispered louder now. He walks with the erased. He is no longer his own. I felt their fear, but also their envy. I alone had what they had lost. Company of the vanished. One evening I asked her directly. "Lynn," I said softly, sitting by the shrine of shoes, "what happened to you? Did the Kwai take you?" The wind stirred. Leaves rustled. Her voice came faint. "I was late coming home. Mama called, but I stopped at the crossroad. I heard the clogs. I looked back. Her words broke off. Silence swallowed the rest. I clutched the sandals tighter. That was all it took. A glance. Curiosity, as the old woman had warned. Now she lingered here, half of nothing, clinging to scraps of leather and thread. That night the dreams grew stronger. I dreamed of walking through the village as normal, except everyone else had no shadows. They drifted like pale shells, their footsteps making no sound. Only I and the child cast darkness. And behind us came the Kwai, patient, waiting, its clogs keeping time like a funeral drum. I woke gasping, but the dream clung to me, real as any memory. When I looked down, I saw something new. The sandals cast a shadow, not faint, not blurred, but whole, small, clear, more solid than my own. I told Ben the next morning. His face went white. "Do you not understand?" he cried. "It's not your shadow returning. It's hers. She is pulling herself back through you. Each day she grows stronger. You grow less." His words rattled in me. Was that true? I touched my chest. My breath still moved. My blood still pumped. But he was right about one thing. My own shadow was nearly gone. A smear. The sandal's shadow was darker than mine. I could not tell anymore who was surviving and who was fading. That evening I sat in the house with the sandals before me. I whispered, "Are you alive?" The answer came clear as a bell. "If you remember me, I am." I shut my eyes, torn between terror and tenderness. She was right. Memory kept her here, and memory was all that tethered me too. But whose memory was stronger, hers of being taken or mine of being whole? The clogs came again. Clop, clop, always circling, always waiting. The child's voice rose sharp, urgent. "Don't let go, or we'll both vanish." And for the first time, I wondered if the Kwai was not hunting me at all. Perhaps it was waiting, waiting for me to finish the work myself, until I no longer knew where I ended and the child began. By then, I had grown used to the feeling of her beside me. Lynn, or the echo I called by that name. When I walked, I sensed her steps. When I paused, I felt her tugging at my sleeve. She had become constant, more present than my own shadow, and perhaps that was the problem. The villagers began to see it too. It happened first at the communal well. I had bent to draw water, the sandals resting by my feet. The surface rippled, and there, beside my gaunt reflection, another appeared. Small, faceless, but distinct. A second outline bending as if to drink. I froze. My hand trembled on the rope. And when I glanced sideways, I saw the villagers standing in silence, watching. Their eyes were wide, not with curiosity, but dread. One woman dropped her bucket and fled, screaming. Others followed, whispering prayers under their breath. I looked back into the water. The reflection still lingered, clinging to mine. For the first time, I realized the truth. It wasn't only me who could see her anymore. That night, Ben came to me, his face stricken. "You must leave," he said. "I can't," I whispered. "If I go, she goes with me. If I stay, perhaps there's a way." "There is no way," he cut in. His hands shook as he pointed at the sandals. "She is no longer only memory. She is becoming. And you," his voice broke, "you are the price she's paying." The words stung, though I already knew them to be true. My body had grown weaker each day, my skin thinner, my breath shallow. I barely recognized myself in the mirror anymore. But when I looked at the sandals, I felt her clutching me tighter. A child's whisper, "Don't let them take me again." And I could not let go. The villagers did not wait. 2 nights later, they gathered outside my stilt house, torches flaring against the dark. Their voices rose like a storm, low at first, then furious. "Send him away. He walks with the erased. He will bring the kwai into our homes." I pressed myself against the bamboo wall, sandals clutched to my chest. Lynn's voice whimpered in my ear. "They'll make us disappear." The door rattled as hands struck it. I heard Lam's voice rise above the rest. "You have brought danger here. You meddled where no outsider should. You keep what belongs to the dead. Leave now, or we will cast you out." The crowd roared agreement. For a moment I considered surrendering, to give up the sandals, to beg forgiveness, to crawl back into anonymity. But when I looked down, I saw the faint, clear shadow the sandals cast on the floor. Stronger than mine, realer than mine, and I realized without them, I was nothing. I stepped outside, sandals in hand. The crowd parted slightly, faces pale in torchlight. "You fear me," I said hoarsely, "because I walk with what you lost. But tell me, how many of you come to this shrine and whisper names? How many weep for shoes left behind? You want them back. You all do." Murmurs spread. Some lowered their eyes. Others spat, muttering prayers. Lum's voice thundered, "We remember by silence, not by binding the dead to the living." You are not remembering. You are defying. That path leads only to more hunger." He raised his hand, and the crowd surged forward. That was when it happened. The sandals shifted in my grip, violently, as though ripped from within. A shadow burst outward, small but solid, stretching across the dirt. A child's figure, head, shoulders, arms, etched clear in the firelight. The villagers gasped, recoiling. Some dropped their torches. Others fell to their knees. Lynn stood beside me, her form faint but undeniable, her presence burning against the night. For the first time, she was visible to all. The crowd broke into chaos. Some wailed in terror, fleeing into the darkness. Others shouted curses, calling me cursed, possessed. Only Lam stood firm, though I saw his body trembling. "You see," he cried, "this is no child. This is hunger reborn. He has let it back into our world." But I knew different. Her hand, cold, weightless, slipped into mine. She looked up at me, faceless yet pleading, and I felt her sorrow, vast and raw. She was no demon. She was what the demon had left behind, and perhaps she was my only chance to survive. That night, no one came near me. The villagers scattered into their homes, bolts fastened tight. I remained in the square, sandals beside me, Lynn's faint outline swaying in the torchlight. The silence after the chaos was deeper than ever, as if the mountains themselves held their breath. Then came the clogs. Clop, clop, clop. From the crossroad, steady, deliberate, the kwai had arrived. Lynn's shadow pressed closer to me, trembling. The sandals shuddered as if caught between two hungers. I understood then. The village had turned away. No shrine, no incense, no prayer would help me now. It was only me and her and the thing that wanted us both. The clogs echoed louder than ever, each strike reverberating through the soil, rattling in my chest like a second heartbeat. The villagers, though they had fled into their houses, had not gone far. From behind shuttered doors and narrow slits in bamboo walls, I felt their eyes pressing into the square, unwilling to see, unable to look away. At my side, Lynn's faint outline clung close. Her small hand, invisible to the others, squeezed mine with desperate force. The sandals twitched at our feet, straps tightening and loosening as if they were living veins. Then it came. The kwai did not slink from shadow this time. It strode into the torchlight, as if unafraid of witness. Its form was darker than the night surrounding it, a hollow cut into existence. Where its face should be was only absence, sucking the air, the flame, the courage from everything nearby. The clogs struck the dirt, slow and patient. The villagers gasped audibly. Some began to chant old prayers, their voices shaking. Others pressed their children's faces into their chests. For the first time, they too saw what I had been carrying alone. The demon stopped at the edge of the shrine of shoes, its head tilted, not toward the crowd, not toward the shrine, but directly at me and at the child's shadow beside me. The air thickened. My chest felt bound. My nearly vanished shadow trembled faintly on the dirt, weak as smoke, while Lynn stood sharp and clear. And then I understood. It was not me it sought anymore. It was her. Or rather, the fragment of her that had escaped. Lynn's voice broke in my ear, trembling. "Don't let go. Please. If you let go, I'll vanish again." The clogs tapped once, closer. The demon's form wavered, stretching long fingers of darkness toward her. Something in me snapped. I shoved the sandals behind me, standing between her and the void. "You've taken enough," I whispered, though my voice shook. "You cannot have her again." The demon froze. The torches sputtered, flames bending toward its hollow body. The villagers wailed from their houses, cries of terror blending with the hiss of fire. And then it laughed, not with sound, but with silence collapsing inward, a void pressing against my ears until I heard nothing at all. The world itself seemed to pause. When hearing returned, the clogs struck again, directly before me. The pull came fierce, stronger than ever. My chest seized as though invisible cords were ripping the last of me away. My blurred shadow tore from my feet, stretching toward the demon like a tether snapping free. I screamed, clutching my chest, falling to my knees. Lynn cried out too, her small outline flickering, as if the pull tore at her as well. And then, in desperation, I did the only thing I could. I seized the sandals and slammed them against the earth. The sound cracked like a heartbeat. The strap split, releasing a faint burst of dust. And Lynn's shadow blazed bright, stretching tall, larger than ever before. For a single impossible moment, her outline eclipsed the demon itself, a child's silhouette standing against a hollow void. The villagers gasped in unison. Some fell to their knees, others clutched their heads as if the sight burned their eyes. The demon recoiled, its form rippled violently, edges fraying like torn cloth. For the first time it stumbled, but the victory was short. The sandals crumbled in my hands, the leather disintegrating into ash. The anchor that had tethered Lynn here was gone. Her shadow flickered wildly, unstable, stretching and collapsing. She clutched at me, but her fingers slipped through, intangible. "I don't want to go back." Her voice wailed, high and breaking. My chest tore with grief. I reached, desperate, but the void surged forward again. The demon lunged, not with hands but with hunger, swallowing the air, the light, the voices. Torches died instantly, plunging the square into near darkness. I held Lynn's form, my arms closing around nothing. She shimmered, weaker and weaker. My own body felt hollow, collapsing inward, the absence gnawing at me. And then I heard the villagers' voices rise, not in prayer, but in wails of rage and sorrow. For the first time, they cried aloud the names of those erased. Names poured from every throat, hundreds of voices, breaking the silence they had kept for so long. The sound was deafening, a chorus of memory. And the demon faltered. It twisted, form jerking, as though the weight of so many names pressed against it. In that storm of voices, Lynn's shadow steadied. She looked at me, faceless, yet filled with something I could feel. Gratitude. Her whisper came one last time. "Thank you for remembering." And then she was gone. Her shadow dissolved into the earth, leaving only darkness behind. The square fell silent. The demon, though weakened, did not vanish. It stood, wavering, as if waiting. My body shook violently, hollow, half erased. The villagers stepped from their houses slowly, torches relit, faces pale. They saw me crumpled in the dirt, saw the demon looming. And they understood this was not over. The Kwayan Bong had been resisted but not defeated, and I, who had carried the child back into their sight, was now the thinnest shadow of all. I do not know how long I lay in the dirt of the square. The night air pressed against me like damp cloth, every breath shallow, every bone trembling. Around me the villagers emerged one by one, their torches flickering weakly. They kept their distance, as if the ground around me were poisoned. The demon still lingered at the edge of the shrine of shoes. Its form shivered, thin and unstable, yet solid enough to remain. The clogs tapped once, slow, deliberate, as though reminding us all it was still there, still waiting. No one dared move. No one dared speak. And then Lum, the old village head, stepped forward. His back was bent, his face carved with lines deeper than stone. He did not look at me. He looked only at the hollow shape across the square. "It will not leave," he whispered. His voice carried, cracked and weary. "It has never left." The villagers murmured, frightened. Some clutched their children tighter. Others raised their torches higher, though the flames seemed to bow toward the void as if drawn by hunger. I forced myself onto my elbows, my voice hoarse. "You saw it falter when you spoke their names. That was what weakened it." All eyes turned to me. For the first time, I felt their attention not as fear alone, but as accusation. "You brought it into our sight," one man spat. "You gave shape to what we were meant to forget," another woman hissed. I coughed, my chest hollow, my shadow nearly gone. "It feeds on forgetting. That is why it wins. You buried your dead in silence, left only shoes behind. Memory is what it cannot devour." But my words fell heavy, unwanted. For them, remembering was a wound too deep to open. Lum shook his head. "You do not understand, foreigner. To live here, we do not fight it, we endure it. That is survival." His words struck like stones. Endure, accept, pretend absence is nothing. Yet hadn't I felt Lynn's small hand in mine? Hadn't I heard her laughter echo faint in my ears? She was not nothing. None of them were. I staggered to my feet, swaying, pointing toward the shrine. "Every shoe here is a voice waiting to be remembered. That is why it recoiled. That is why it could not take her fully." But the villagers flinched. One woman wailed, pressing her palms to her ears. Another shouted, "Stop! You will call them back again." Their fear was not of the demon alone. It was of what memory demanded. Grief, guilt. The clogs struck louder now, as if feeding on the tension. Clop, clop. The figure shifted, stretching taller, its form swelling with the silence that spread across the square. I realized with cold clarity what it wanted. Not just shadows, but complicity, our willingness to look away. Every time we silenced a name, every time we treated a vanished life as absence, it grew. My knees buckled. My chest burned as if my own breath was being pulled from me. My blurred shadow barely clung to the dirt at my feet, and in that suffocating moment, I heard Lynn's voice again, faint, far away. "Don't let them forget." I cried out, desperate, broken. "Say their names, all of you. If you want your children to live, speak them. Speak them now." The villagers recoiled, muttering, refusing. Their fear was stronger than my plea. I collapsed beside the shrine, my hands scraping against the rows of shoes. Dust clung to my palms. For a moment I thought I felt dozens of tiny hands clutching mine, begging. The demon loomed taller. The clogs struck faster, louder. Clop, clop, clop. I realized then that I was nearly gone. My body was a husk, my voice thin. But I had one act left. I clutched the shoes around me, dragging them into a heap, pressing my forehead against them. And with what little strength I had, I whispered every name I could remember. The ones I had heard murmured, The ones Ben had told me, the ones villagers had tried to bury in silence. My dung, ha, Lin. Each name cracked my throat raw. Each name bled from me like a final offering. The ground trembled faintly. The torches flared, fighting against the pull of the void. The demon froze, its form rippling as if pierced by invisible wounds. The villagers gasped, terror-stricken. Some began to cry out names too, unwilling at first, then louder, until the square rang again with voices, grief spilling into air that had held silence too long. And the demon faltered. Its clogs stumbled, the sound uneven. Its form shivered violently, shrinking, retreating. The void howled without sound, collapsing inward. The villagers' cries rose louder, names pouring like floodwater. The shrine of shoes rattled as if struck by wind. And for a single heartbeat I believed, perhaps it could end. But the effort tore me apart. My vision blurred. My knees gave way. My shadow tore loose entirely, stretching toward the void like smoke sucked into fire. Pain split me. My body fell limp against the earth. The last thing I saw was the villagers, mouths open, screaming names into the night. Their fear had broken, if only for a moment. The last thing I heard was the clogs, fading, receding, though never gone. And the last thing I felt was Lynn's voice, soft as breath against my ear. You kept me a little longer. Then everything dimmed, as though the world had blown out its last lamp. When I woke, the world no longer felt the same. Light passed strangely through me, as though I were not entirely solid. My hand shook when I raised it before my eyes. The skin was pale, almost translucent. The lines blurred. I cast no shadow, and yet I was not gone. My chest rose and fell, faint but steady. My heart beat like a muffled drum, slower than before. I existed in the space between. The villagers looked at me differently now, not with fear alone, but with something heavier, guilt. For the first time, they could not deny what I had said. They had seen the Kwai. They had cried the names of the lost. And for a heartbeat, they had pushed it back. But at what cost? Children peeked at me from doorways, their eyes wide. Women muttered prayers when I passed. Men turned away, unable to meet my gaze. Even Ben kept his distance. His face was gaunt, his eyes red-rimmed. When he finally approached, his voice was hollow. You should not be alive. I'm not, I whispered. Not fully. He swallowed hard. The village speaks of leaving, of abandoning this place. They believe the Kwai has grown stronger because of you. Because I remembered, I said bitterly. His lips trembled. Because you refused silence. At night I wandered alone through the square. The shrine of shoes stood still, rows upon rows, heavy with memory. I touched them lightly, but the voices had faded. No whispers, no flickers. The demon had taken them deeper. Only faint echoes remained, like songs forgotten but still hummed in dreams. And yet, I heard one voice, Lynn, soft, faint, but clear. You are not like them. You cannot leave. Her presence lingered, even without the sandals. I felt her near, in the hush between footsteps, in the breath of wind against the bamboo walls. She was a fragment, yes, but so was I now. The next morning, the village gathered in the square. Torches burned though the sun was already high, as if they no longer trusted daylight alone. Lum spoke, his voice cracked but firm. We cannot live here anymore. The Kwai has grown too close. We will move down the valley, abandon this place to silence. Murmurs rose, some relieved, others grief-stricken. To abandon a home was to abandon graves, fields, histories, yet fear weighed heavier. And then their eyes turned to me. What of him? Someone asked. He belongs to it now, another whispered. If he comes, the Kui will follow. The silence that followed was worse than shouts. I understood. I was no longer guest nor enemy. I was a wound. That evening, Ben came once more. He could barely look at me. They will leave tomorrow, he said. I don't know if I will see you again. I managed a hollow smile. Then say my name at least. Let it linger somewhere. His eyes brimmed with tears. Jonathan. The sound cut me deeply, sharper than the demon's pull. My name, spoken in this place of silence. Proof that I had lived here, even if the world would deny it. I gripped his arm, though my hand passed almost through. Remember me, that's all I ask. That night the clogs returned, louder than ever, pounding through the emptying village. Clop, clop, clop. The demons circled, patient, inevitable. And for the first time I did not hide. I stepped into the square, translucent, almost weightless. The villagers watched from behind barred windows, torches quivering. The demon stopped before me, taller than houses, wider than night. It bent low, faceless, hollow. I felt no fear, only a strange calm, because I realized then I was no longer its prey. I was becoming like it, half a man, half a shadow, a reminder that once you invite forgetting, you can never fully return. The village left at dawn. I watched from the square as they carried bundles on their backs, leading buffalo down the narrow path toward the valley. Their faces were drawn tight, their eyes fixed forward, never once turning back. Even Ben, who had spoken my name, did not look at me as he passed. I stood invisible among them, more absence than body. The morning sun touched the earth, and where others cast long shadows that stretched like black rivers behind them, I left nothing. No one said farewell. No one dared. By afternoon, the houses stood hollow, shutters closed, doors swinging in the mountain wind. Smoke no longer rose from the kitchens. The shrine of shoes remained, rows upon rows, untouched. I walked among them in silence, fingers grazing cracked leather and splintered wood. I thought I heard whispers, but they were faint, lost like echoes in a cave. Only one voice lingered clear. Don't let them forget. Lynn. Always Lynn. Her presence clung to me still, though the sandals had turned to ash. Perhaps because I had spoken her name, remembered her story, even if I had invented half of it. Memory itself was enough to give her form, but memory is a double-edged blade. The longer I carried her, the less I felt myself. My voice trembled when I spoke aloud. Sometimes I did not know if it was me speaking or her, borrowing my breath. Night came quickly in the empty village. The clogs began before the sun had fully set. Clop, clop, clop. The demon had no reason to hide now. With no villagers to scatter, no silence to shield them, it came straight to the square. Its form filled the darkness, swallowing the outlines of houses, bending the trees as if they were reeds. I did not flee. Where could I go? I stood by the shrine, surrounded by shoes, their mute testimony my only company. The demon paused before me, its hollow face bent close, so near I felt the air collapse around it. The sound of the world sucked away. It did not reach for me. It did not need to. I was already more like it than like the living. Still I spoke. My voice was a whisper, but it carried. I know you now. You feed on forgetting. You thrive on silence. But I remember them. I remember Lynn. The demon shivered. Its form rippled violently, though it did not retreat. Perhaps memory wounded it, but not enough to banish it. And perhaps that was the point. Some truths are never banished, only endured. I sat on the steps of the shrine until the lantern guttered out. The clogs circled once, twice, then faded into the mountains. The night fell quiet. I do not know how many days passed since. Time feels brittle, slipping between my hands. I wander the empty houses, the silent square, the shrine that grows heavier with each season. My body is thin, almost nothing. When I look into water, I see no reflection at all. And yet sometimes I hear footsteps beside mine, soft, light, the tread of a child. Sometimes I feel her hand slip into mine. She is still here, or I am still with her. Perhaps both. If you ever find yourself in the mountains, if you pass an abandoned village with only shoes left at a shrine, do not linger, do not speak, and whatever you do not walk through the crossroad after dark, for your shadow is the only proof you were ever here, and once it is gone, so are you. Thanks for watching the whole video. Please give me a like and subscribe to the channel to watch more interesting stories.